Welcome to our third stage talk. Is there a common thread that connects the pen, brush, and the expressions through dance? What is the importance of Brahma Viharas or Buddhist ethics in the Jataka tales? Is there a link between literature and the paintings of Ajanta? What is the importance of rasa in the depictions using the techniques mentioned in the Natya Shastra? Are these the too many questions? But we have a person amongst us who will be answering all of these questions. That is Dr. Radha Kumar. She is presenting the stage talk titled Samvaad, a synergy between pen, the brush, and the depiction. Dr. Radha Kumar is an associate professor in the Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology at the St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. Radha has a doctorate in Buddhism and masters in Sitar and Bharatanatyam. Through her learnings and demonstrative performance, Radha will help us find the answers to these questions. Please put your hands together for Radha.
From going back to our degree college, we are meeting on this platform after how many ever years. We do not want to say how many years because then you can guess our age. So thank you so much for being there and expressing the solidarity. So happy. Thank you. So the title of my talk, as Sangeeta ji very rightly said, I'm being a prof in St. Xavier's College, teaching there for more than 3 decades. There is a system that all of us follow in the sense of how you get across your topic, and that's content is always king. So keeping that particular format and the background that I have with my studies in early Buddhism, the title of my thesis is Impact of Buddha in Ancient Indian Polity, where I studied the Sutta Pitaka with all the 5 Nikayas. So when you're looking at literature, that is the bit that I will be touching on, but in a short time of 50 minutes that I have been given, there's just one particular set of literature that I will take, which is the very famous Jataka tales. And since we are looking at Jataka is something that all of us know, right from a child who is going to school, the famous Amarchandra Katha comics, or as stories that are there all over. Another reason why I decided to enter this particular space is the national education policy, which I think all of us should be so proud of, has brought in the subject called Indian Knowledge System, IKS. And as IKS talks about, and the NEP also talks about, it tries to basically cut down these bridges, these compartments between various courses. Science is science, arts is arts, commerce is commerce. I mean, that's the state that all of us were in once upon a time. But today, a subject is known for its knowledge, a subject is known for its content, and also this whole interdisciplinary thing of trying to understand literature, music and dance at a very holistic level, and what are the various conversations, what are the various linkages that they have. So keeping that background, I decided to take this particular topic. Another reason why I decided to touch this particular topic, because this is closer home. We all have the Public Gardens ASI library, and there we have this Ajanta gallery. Now the interesting bit is, the entire sites of Ajanta, Aurangabad was very much part of this space that we know as Andhra, which was the Madras Presidency. And at that time, the Nizam of Hyderabad commissioned these 2 artists, Mir Usman Ali Khan, and who actually reproduced the Ajanta paintings. Now these paintings are very much present in the ASI gallery, Public Gardens. So this is again one of the reasons why I decided to actually work with this particular topic. Again, what we really understand with this topic is how many of us actually know that in spaces that we live, we have such treasures. So if you really want to study how the Ajanta paintings were during the time when it was discovered, you just have to go to Public Gardens, and there you will have the paintings in its format. So these are some of the representations that is there. So that's again one of the reasons why I decided to look at Jataka tales and look at Ajanta, because it's also our good old Hyderabad, celebrating the city. Now this is how the gallery is. You could always go and take a look and see how it is maintained. Last time when I went many years back, I must say it was not very well lit. The captions etc. was not there, but now I'm told that it has been refurbished. I have not been there recently, but this is to connect the dots. Now coming to my topic. Since we are looking at the Hyderabad Literary Festival, we are looking at literature, Jatakas becomes a very important topic for us to understand. Basically, Jataka is part of what we understand as the Sutta Pitaka, which is, it has 5 Nikayas, and we have the Kuttuka Nikaya, and in the Kuttuka Nikaya, one of the topics or one of the texts that is there is Jatakas. Most of the time when we study Jatakas, it is considered as stories, but we really don't understand, or maybe we are not really focusing on the deep philosophy that exists in the Jataka literature. And this is exactly what I have put down. The term that I have used there is dukkha. One of the most important aspects of Buddhist philosophy and Buddha's teachings is dukkha, which basically means dissatisfaction. And the reason for this dissatisfaction are desire, dvesha, and one of the most important thing, my dear friends, is avidya. I used the Sanskrit term avidya, the Pali term is avidya. Now, avidya of what? Avidya of the fact that everything in this particular universe is not permanent. It is fleeting. So at every time, things are moving so fast, and the fact that everything is so impermanent, and despite that, we have the sense-object contact, sense-object craving, we get into these cycles of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, becomes a very big point to understand. Now, these are the various mental modifications that comes through. Of course, I don't want to go into it in detail, but the types of dukkha that we speak about is adhyatmika dukkha, adibhautika dukkha, adi-daivika dukkha. Now, did we ever really understand, or did we really know that when you look at a mural of a Jataka in either Ajanta or Bagh paintings or in Ceylon, that these paintings and these murals that has been there has such deep philosophical and metaphysical significance. So that's what I'm going to try and explore, and maybe with Sangeeta ma'am's permission, we could, if time permits, maybe even a Q&A if time permits. Now the suttas are a source. Now again, being in the space of academic, for me sources are very important. And again, since this is the Hyderabad Literary Festival, especially for a person coming from ancient India, we've always been told that whether we are looking at Vedas or epics or any of this, it can't be considered as historical sources. Why? Because Vedas are apurusheya, or Ramayana and Mahabharata is mythology. But the fact of the case is, the kind of research that's being done today, it is very evident and it's very clear that these are very important literary sources. Maybe it was not documented in tangible way like the Code of Hammurabi or what you see in Egypt. But the fact of the case is, the education system in this country, and we should be so proud of that, was so strong that all this literature went on from one generation to another through a system called rote learning in the Vedic Charanas. Keeping the same format, the Buddhist suttas went from one generation to another through a very strong system which is called as the Sanghas. And these Sanghas were maintained by the bhikkhus as well as the bhikkhunis. And some of the most famous Sanghas turned out to be the universities, whether it's Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, closer home, Nagarjuna Konda. Right? So the suttas play such a predominant role for us to understand the socio-economic, political conditions in India at that particular point in time. So for us to say that literature, apart from the fact of it just being to read, like Jatakas, as an example, it's just a story. Literature has lots of information. It's a treasure house for us to construct the society, the people, including the position of woman. I was just speaking to another person just before this talk that this person is working on a text called Teri Gatha. Now, Teri Gatha is again a beautiful text that speaks about Buddhist bhikkhunis. Absolutely, yes. Thank you, ma'am. And also, I worked on this text called Vimanavattu, which speaks about how women coming from all walks of life has the right to give some kind of a donation to the Sangha, because of which she gets a Vimana that takes her to heaven, to the Tatvimsa heaven. And I'm very proud to say that I staged that as a dance ballet for one of the international conferences in the Buddhist Center back in Mumbai. So this sculpture here is from St. Xavier's College. We have a beautiful museum called Dehra's Museum, which has fascinating Gandhara sculptures, which was collected by Father Hera. So the sculpture is from there. Now when we look at Jatakas, I will try and keep it as short as I can. The Jataka literature per se speaks about the birth tales of Buddha. And what is most important is, you can read the slide as I'm summarizing it for you. The birth tales of Buddha is in the form of Bodhisattva. Now this Bodhisattva was in various forms. The Bodhisattva was in form of an elephant, Bodhisattva was in form of a hamsa, Bodhisattva was as a king, various stories, which you will see in the slides that I will develop. So as a Bodhisattva, the most important thing that he had to do was to basically work for the goodness of others. Isn't that a lovely thought? A literature that focuses not on self but on others, which is the need of the hour today. Now my question also to this august audience, especially in a platform like this, is when we are taking all of this back to our education institutions, whether it's schools or colleges, how are we focusing on getting this knowledge across to a child who's in grade 3 or grade 4? Because let me tell you the harsh truth, my dear friends. When a child and this is a fact, when a child comes to a degree college and wants to opt for a paper like Ancient Indian History, Culture, Archaeology, the first thing that is asked by the parents and everyone is, what are you going to do with this? Future kya hai iska? Career kya hoga iska? And this is in our own country, in our own land. Then finally, if the child is majoring in the subject, it leads to another set of dialogues and the kind of opposition, if I may say so, maybe it's a very strong word, but it is, for the child to go on to do something with that subject, becomes a very big question mark. And why? The reason is, none of this there's no trickle down effect that happens of all this knowledge to the grassroots level. So I'm also using this platform to maybe also bring about this kind of an ideation, is how do you basically take classical literature, whether it is Sanskrit plays, whether it's Pali literature, something as simple as Jatakas, say to the school level. Can there be some platform? So this is again ideation to look at how one can work. Now the Jatakas itself talks about all of this, inclusive nature of life. It always, the leader who charts out the entire course of action, display of empathy. It should not get derailed and enmeshed in confusion situations, cultivates and enhances focus, and it brings about intuition. Intuition is again a very important point. So the Jatakas itself tries to correlate this matter in a way that it sets this thought processes into the society. It also tries to see that members are not selfish. It equips oneself, importance of learning. It talks about unity. It promotes cultivate the feeling of selflessness as well as holistic understanding. All of this is what that comes out of the literature of Jatakas. At the same time, we also see that it brings about these nivarnas, these 5 nivarnas which I put down here, is again very, very important. It destroys worry, it destroys doubts, it destroys all these feelings, which I put down, and we will see how it works. Most important, the Jataka literature supports what is called as the Arya Attangika Magga, which is the middle path, which is again the need of the hour. Today, with the kind of stress that everyone goes through, I see some young people sitting out here, the multitasking that you have to do, the kind of challenges that you go through in life, the best way of handling all of this is adopt what is called as the Majjhima Patipada or the middle path, which is what Buddha spoke about, and also the Jatakas. Now, what is it that the Jatakas really looked at? What is it that the Jatakas really focused on? My dear friends, Buddha spoke about 4 noble truths. He said dukkha, which is the cause of sorrow, dukkha samudaya, which is the causation of sorrow, dukkha nirodha, the way out, how sorrow can be removed, and dukkha nirodha marga, which basically means what is the way out. The previous slide that I showed you, the Attangika Magga, is how can you come out of sorrow. Now, that particular bit leads to what is called as Shila, Samadhi and Prajna. Now, Shila, Samadhi, Prajna is all of this. It talks about a discipline, it talks about cultivating various, kind of constraints and, taking, including meals, etc. So, in fact, when you read the Shila, it's almost like the right kind of a lifestyle that all of us really need to lead, take food correctly, eat on time, have a disciplined life, all of that. So the Shila bit of it speaks about that exclusively. And plus all kind of luxuries, gold, silver, in that entire space. Now coming to the Jatakas, there are about 545 Jatakas. And each of these Jatakas have some very interesting stories to say. And it also tells us very importantly that we have various conflicting situations that keep happening all the time and how we can face it. Now, whenever that we speak about this, we are always looking at writings that is happening outside this land, psychiatrists and psychologists writing. But the fact of the case is literature in this land, and specifically since I'm looking at Buddhist literature and specifically Jatakas, gives these ideas so beautifully. So this is one of the very famous sayings of a very famous Buddhist scholar, which I put down. And asavas are basically all kinds of sense-object craving, sense-object attachment. How is it that you can come out of it totally? The Dasaparamitas also speaks about all of this. Generosity, Shila, renunciation, Panya, Virya, Kanti, Adhana, Metta, Upeka, all of this is spoken about through the stories of Jatakas and through the stories of the literature that we have in the Buddhist sources. Now this beautiful sculpture that is there is a beautiful sculpture of Buddha in the form of Gandhara art. Now this is again very interesting, my dear friends. Why is it that the Kushans, Yuchi tribe who came from China, took to Buddhism? What was the reason why they took to Buddhism? The reason being, Buddha's teachings was exceedingly simple. It was easy for people to understand, and that is enshrined in the entire space of literature. So the first bit of my lecture, my session, which I wanted to, I'm talking with the pen. I'm talking with the pen. So I said pen, brush, and depiction. So I'm trying to get across that what is it that pen has to say through the literature that is there, which is again something that maybe most of us, need to revisit. Now, these Brahma Viharas are very important. The Brahma Viharas are Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upeka, which streamlines the thought process. So the Jataka literature speaks about these 4 aspects very beautifully. What is Metta? Metta is basically having Maitri. Now, if I have to depict this, say, in the form of mudras and the dance, just to give you an idea, a Metta could be something like where you are looking at any kind of form, where Metta, you are Metta. Karuna universal love. You know, you're looking at universal love. And the last thing is upeka. Upeka is present. You are in touch with that cosmic essence all the time. So even the words like this, through the various abhinaya, through the various mudras, through the various actions, can be depicted in a story form. Now, for the longest time, I have been working on a lot of dance ballets, where I have used these techniques to bring my points across. And some of those points are, some of these elements here are something like Lasya Raudri Stree. So, if you are looking at Lasya Raudri, how a woman is portrayed through various emotions through literature. An example of that is if I want to show Raudra, there is, I can say, I Giri Nandhini Nandhita Medhini Vishwavinodhini Nandanute Girivara Vindya Shirodhini Vasini Takita Takita Tanana Takita Takati Takita Takati. In fact, I've staged this ballet. At the same time, if I'm looking at Shringara, Samaga, Pamaga Maga Sanipa, Samaga, Gama Panina Nana. So, the whole story of Shakuntala. Right? At the same time, I'm showing Karuna. Dada pa ma ba ga ma dada pa Bhairav. I also have done my Sangeet Alankar in sitar. So, ragon ka jo ras hai, that comes across very, very beautifully. Right? The rasa of the rag is something that we can also explore through combining that through dance, through the various stories, and through literature. So this is one space where I have worked on. In fact, a ballet also called Sakya Haran, which talks about the fight between the two Mahajanapadas. Ke baare mein bhi I have staged that. So coming back to this, okay. Now, since now we get into the rasa bit, right? So literature, I have tried to tell you that the entire space of literature, how do you look at literature, what are the panels of literature. Here, I'm taking the Jatakas through sculptures, the rasa bhava. Now, when you look at a sculpture like this is the Sibi Jataka. The Sibi Jataka again talks about how the story of how Buddha gives his pound of flesh for protecting that pigeon, the Sibi Jataka. So these are stories. Now these are the sculptural evidences. So even here, if you see the expression, despite this being a static medium, the element of the rasa bit comes out so beautifully. Now, all these years what happens is, we have been studying all of this as compartments. This is sculpture, that is painting, that is literature. The question is, can there be a Samvaad? Now this is Ruru Jataka. I will show you some more better pictures. And now this is sculpture. So what am I trying to tell you? That the Jataka stories, which is literature, is part of both the static medium, okay, which is sculptures and paintings. And despite that being static, is also giving us so much of rasa swadana, rasa anubhuti. Okay, so this is the Ruru Jataka. Another Jataka that I took is Chatnataka Jataka. So this is a story of this entire, by the way, the literature that we have of all the Jatakas is explicit. They are absolutely explicit. They give us all the details. They tell us the socio-economic political conditions. In fact, Jataka is a very big literature for us to understand the economic conditions of our land. And most of the time we always say India was only spiritual and we didn't have any economic activities. That's a big problem, right? And in the Purushartha itself, we have Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Artha basically means economic activities. Chatnataka Jataka, this is a representation of a sculpture. Chatnataka Jataka, again, we have impressions of how it is done. A beautiful Jataka, which is Mahakapi Jataka, which speaks about how Buddha, in the form of a monkey, decided to act as a bridge to let his retinue cross. So that is the Mahakapi Jataka. Now this is now again, when you go to these sites, when you go to these places, most of the time you would just look at it. And nowadays, of course, selfie ka zamana ho gaya. Ki bas selfie खींच लिया, Instagram में डाल लिया, like हो गया, उसके बाद we forgetting about it. The fact is, what is it that these stories are saying? And the most important, since my session is on Samvaad, this is based on literature. You get the point? So the story that is being depicted there is based on literature that also tells us so beautifully that there is a connect between the writer, between the sculptor and the creator. And what is it trying to tell us? It is trying to get us the rasa anubhuti of Brahma Viharas. Ki when we go and see, look, see this monkey, na, poor thing. See, it's giving its life up for letting impressions, sense object impressions, the samskaras, the various impressions that are coming. What's happening to us today? Today, anything that you see around us is always rajas. And today, everything is in the click of our thumb. Right? So what are the impressions, and we are expecting all our children and all our students, to come out as great people. How can that happen without giving them the platform to ideate? What are the impressions that we are actually giving to them is the question that I think we collectively have to raise. Now this is exactly what I'm trying to say. Mahakavi Jataka, sculptures, Mathrukosha Jataka. Now why is it that I put these things? Because my dear friends, all this is studied. But this studies, unfortunately, I'm making a very bold statement out here, does not translate, because today any subject that is taken is translating only to jobs. The ties to the NEP policy today. That, they have made this paper called IKS, Indian Knowledge System, compulsory to every student in first year. That is, you can be science, you can be commerce, you can be biology, but you need to study IKS. And I have had the good fortune, and I'm blessed that I work as an IKS professor, coordinator in college, where I've had the blessing of teaching 1,600 students on the basis and basic understanding of Indian knowledge systems. Mathrukosha Jataka, this is how it is portrayed. These are the stories. Love of the elephant, as he refuses to even capture. He was in grief as he was taken away from his mother. Treachery of the hunter who is protected, significant of Vatsalya Bhava. So an elephant story that talks about Vatsalya. It talks about the love of the mother. Mahajanaka Jataka here again. Now this Mahajanaka Jataka is very interesting. I'll go to the pictures directly. So here you have this king, Mahajanaka, who's actually wanting to go away into the Buddhist Sangha. So the story, there's a whole story here where he has gone to Swarnabhumi. That is to get a lot of wealth. Then finally he gathers all his wealth and he doesn't like the wealth. He wants to give up and go back into join the Buddhist Sangha. So here you see, this is from the agenda. Now I'm bringing in rasa. I'm bringing in the brush. Okay, so first I tried to tell you about the pen. Now I'm bringing in the brush, and then of course we'll also do the rasa. So here you see the Mahajanaka Jataka. And here you see Sibli, that is his wife, is trying to entice him, telling him not to go. So some of those poses that is done here is actually done even today in dance. In most of our classical dance forms, we still perform those things. So suppose if I have to stage this as a play, I can use any of my rags. Like say a rag, boop. Ga ga re ga pa ga pa ga re sa ga. No, don't go. Why are you going? I'm there. I'm your wife. Don't leave. So the element of that expression which is there comes through the various rasa bhava that is seen. There are some more better pictures. Mahajanaka Jataka again here, he decides, enough. I'm going to listen to what Gautama Buddha is saying. So the story here, and by the way, the time period of this is 1 CE. That's the time period that we are talking about. So even the expressions, even in dance we have samam, alokita, pralokita, sachi, nimilita, ullokita, alo. So all these expressions that we have is also so beautifully captured by the painter in the brush. So even if you are uninitiated, that look on his face, the hastas very clearly tells us that look, now it's enough, I'm going to listen to what the Tathagat is saying. And here you can see the lady who's behind is looking a little sad. He's going, he should not be going, he's the king. There's just a retinue of things behind, but then she has to let him go. Here you see please look at the expressions on the faces that is drawn. Especially this particular lady, I don't know this clicker, okay. This lady here looking totally shocked. The expressions on the face. The rasa bhava. This is where the rasa comes in. Adbhuta. Totally shocked. How can this happen? Now, so don't you think there is a connect between the literature that is there of Jatakas and what we study in the Natya Shastra? Especially when we are looking at Angika Abhinayam. You're right. So imagine when we study Natya Shastra as Natya Shastra, Buddhist Sutta as Buddhist Sutta, and history is history. Ancient India does not exist. So it is about time that all of them start having this Samvaad. Now, where is Natya Shastra? Can we look at Natya Shastra as a book of psychology? I would say 100% yes. I'm saying it on record. 100% Natya Shastra can be looked at as a book of text of psychology. Okay, so maybe that is for the next session sometime. Right? So here we have the story of Mahajanaka Jataka, and please, my dear friends, look at the garment. This is a garment which has geese. And text. So this also speaks about the existence of such wonderful textiles in our country. Right? So in the literature when we say that the economic aspects that existed in our country constructed through Jatakas is great, we have the reference here as form of this painting. Then here, paying homage to Mahajanaka. That is simply there. She's standing with that little bowl. She's very sad and she's coming to say, it's okay now, what can I do? I will accept you for who you are. Right? So that expression there. And Mahajanaka being now consecrated by his fellow beings with water and things like that. So the Mahajanaka Jataka, again, a very busy scene, my dear friends. Very, very busy scene. So what happens is, through the brush, what is it we can construct? The importance of jewelry, the kind of dresses that they wore, the kind of economic activities that they had. In fact, the hairstyles itself, there are scholars who've studied it. It's called dhammilas. The kind of hairstyles that they had. And this particular period also coincides with the Gupta period, and we study that the Gupta period, yes, was considered to be the golden age. So it all adds up, and definitely there is a samvaad, there is a conversation that happens. Now this is again a beautiful painting. This is Shoka. She's very sad. She's looking really upset. Why? Because Nanda, the Sundari Nanda, there's a whole story. The husband is joining the Sangha. So the wife is very, very feeling very sad. Don't you get that rasa anubhuti here? Don't you get the rasa thing here? And this particular painting is also popularly called as the Dying Princess. Again, by the way, when our artists used, it was just not the murals on the walls. They didn't leave anything at all. They did the ceilings, they did the panels, they did the doors. In fact, a lot of people actually look at the frescoes of Ajanta, murals of Ajanta, with a lot of those paintings, etc., for their dress designs, etc. That's another very important, source that people are inspired. Champaya Jataka, again, the painting itself is so full of activity, so full of things happening, the conversations that are happening. This could almost be a dance scene. What's happening? No, really? I don't care. It's okay now. All those elements comes across so beautifully here. This is one of my most outstanding, paintings. Here you see Gautama Buddha coming back to Kapilavastu. And here, Yashodhara and Rahula, right down here, and an expression in Yashodhara's faces. Why did you do this? What did I do? And then Buddha is standing. Look at the thing of the artist, the Rasa Anubhuti. He's portrayed as such a big man, standing there with a begging bowl, saying that it's okay, you have to give me my picture. And there you see Yashodhara and Rahula, Yashodhara looking at him like that. Now, if I have to depict this in dance, it could be anything. It could be in any of the Bhairav rags, or any of the Bhairavi rags, or any of the Kafi rags, and come slowly. Takkitta, takka, dhimmi, takkitta, takka, dhimmi, takkitta, takka, dhimmi, takka, and you sing sa, 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 re, 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 ga, 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 ma, 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 ma. So, this particular scene, as a trained musician and a dancer, if I look at the scene, in me, this is the way I would construct this particular scene. where I would look, and then the tar could also be vilambit. Dha, adhin, adhin, din, dha, e, ta, adhin. Whoop, slowly. So this entire painting, the rasa anubhuti, this is static. This is definitely static. But if I have to make it dynamic, I could perform this using various rags, using various dance techniques to bring this beautiful emotion, karuna emotion across. Musicians. Even if you look at this painting, especially that fellow who's with that little instrument which seems like a ektara, he looks like a jolly fellow. Oh, okay, rock star Nizam. So suppose even in my interludes, I want to have, and I'm thinking, 100% technically correct, I'm correct. Why? Because I have my sources to tell me that. I have my sources to tell me that. And I have my sources in literature also to tell me that. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. We went back. It's a little difficult to dance and to manage. So this is a Samvaad, right? So, right, just a second please. I'm sorry about this. Yes. So here the other fellow is playing symbols. So symbols also means the various जो भी steps हम लोग उसके साथ बना सकते हैं. So especially if there are artists in the audience, you can look at these various paintings and also construct. And the other fellows also there, the ganas, they're also very happy. So एक ऐसा production में यदि मैं कुछ ऐसा अलग से लाना चाहती हूँ, I have my sources here which I can take from the paintings, from the murals and construct my story. Now this could be part of any of the jatakas. This could be part of any such jatakas. This is again, I decided to bring this painting to the August audience here. We don't know which jataka it is, but somehow I felt that this was so important because the sources tell me that she's a queen sitting in a cushion. So again, if I need to look at a production where my Rasanubhuti, my play production, needs to have that kind of impression to the audience, here I have the sources to tell me how that Aharya Abhinaya can be. You know that in dance we have four. We have Angika, Aharya, Vachika and Satvika. The Satvika Abhinaya could be the previous painting when I showed where Buddha standing and Yashodhara looking. That could be the Satvik painting because that's an emotion that you can't express. That's an emotion that you really need to feel. And especially Yashodhara, one fine day, one fine night, Buddha just walked away. Right? So the literature bit of it also comes in so beautifully. Again, some of the expressions. This is a classic gossip scene. Right? All the ladies looking and saying, kya hua. Especially the last lady there is like totally agache. She doesn't know what's happening, but she's very keen to know. You can see that. Beautiful, isn't it? It is so beautiful. Right? So the paintings itself are simple. So when we watch, when we go to watch it, we would just look at it and just mostly walk away. So this is a trigger for us, a spandana for us to understand this at so many levels. This is again a beautiful. Now this is classic, the various mudras that I used. And that's another thing, my dear friends. The various mudras. You will see Alapadma, you will see Kataka Mukha, you will see Dola Hasta. You also will see Pushpapuraha. Okay, you will see Shikara. Sometimes you will see Tripataka. So you will see a lot of these mudra, hasta mudras here. That means Abhinaya Darpanam, they were quite aware of it. Again, classic Vidura Pandita, woman in the swing. Beautiful. Dhani, dhani, nisa, sa, ni, ba, ma, ba, ga, ma, ni, dhani, sa. Dego, jhum, jhum, kar, yaar. Man, ayo, re, ga, ma, ma, re, re, sa. Ni, sa, ma, ma, ba, ga, ma, ni, dhani, ni, sa. धानी निसा सा नी बगा मा ना नी ना नी आपका वसंत बहार आ गया ना यहाँ पे right so even here also धानी ना नी ना ना of course there is also the rag ragini paintings that's for another day but here I'm looking at the literature my point Samvaad I do not want to lose track Samvaad a conversation between the pen Jataka literature the brush the paintings and the rasas that are coming out. Right? So again, now this is part of a Jataka, Vesantra Jataka, where this fellow, that evil-looking fellow, see how the painter, in his colors, beard, because this particular character called Jujuka, problematic character. It's a huge story, long story. I won't get into it for the lack of time, but you will see how the character is very, very mean. This, my dear friends, is a beautiful painting where you see Maya Devi standing there, so beautifully, as if lost in thought, and the mother of Buddha between, and maybe she's just thinking that expression. And this also tells us, my dear friends, the position of women in our country. The position of women in our country was so explicit, was so beautiful, was so democratic. She was given the space to ideate. Comes across through a lot of these murals. Beautiful, erotic scenes. Vesantra Jataka. He's trying to cheer his wife up. Let it be now, let me go now. Don't do this. And she said, don't now, enough, I don't want to. So the entire Abhinaya, Mukhaja Abhinaya, all of that happens is seen so beautifully through this particular painting. Again, Princess Madi sadly receives from her husband the news of banishment, but the maid looks on. So here also the mudra here is feeling very sad. So the Hasta mudras that are used so beautifully, we can see Vesantra Jataka, the Jujuka, the bad character is shown so beautifully. Vesantra Jataka, again a very happening scene which talks about the political situation. So we come to see the kind of Aharya Vinaya. So especially if you're looking at Rasa, Aharya, clothes also play a very predominant role. So I use this to make that point of mine. One of my all-time favorites, Avalokiteshvara Padmapani. This is one of those beautiful bodhisattvas. Here, Avalokiteshvara, he's looking down. Because Avalokiteshvara is to look down. Padmapani, Padma is hand, he's using a beautiful flower, and Pani is hand. So Avalokiteshvara Padmapani. So you can see that so beautifully here. It's a beautiful bodhisattva representation which highlights the whole Samvaad that I'm trying to get across, which is rasa, which is the entire literature as well as the painting. Then we basically, all of that is Rupa Veda Pramanam, Bhava, Lavanya Yojana, Sadrishyam and Varanika Bhanga. Each of this is seen through the entire production. You see the characters, you see the Rupa Veda, you see the Pramana, you see the Bhava, you see the Lavanya, you see the Yojana, the way it has put across Sadrishya and Varanika Bhanga. The colors that are seen so beautifully. I showed you some of those paintings and I think I must have got my point across. I come to the last bit of my session. Sticking to time. What just happened? Can you help me with this? I don't know what happened. Sorry. Okay, so the last bit of the slides this particular bit I wanted to get across to you was the whole concept of rasa. What do you basically mean by rasa? Now, rasa, my dear friends, has a very deep philosophical as well as psychological elements. And the philosophical psychological bit is, sorry about this. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I was, so sorry. So the key point of rasa is rasa speaks about the expressions, the feelings, the emotions. And this rasa has a very deep philosophical significance because it goes back to understand the three gunas, which is sattva, rajas and tamas. Now, sattva, rajas, tamas is part of the Samkhya doctrine in Chandrashanas. Basically, what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that we are all representation of that supreme cosmic essence, which is Brahman. So we are all Atman, right? So if you are all Atman, then why is it that we are all stuck with this Kama, Krodha, Lobha? Because we are operating at the level of Jiva, where at the level of Jiva, we are operating at the level of Manas, mind. So, Samkhya philosopher, which is Rishi Kapila, spoke about these three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Ideal state is to be Sattva. Rajas is all the time we are running and the mess that we are in. Tamas is laziness. Now the rasa that comes out, these are the technical terms I put down, is to give us that impression of being in the state of Sattva. Right? So if you're looking at the Jataka tales, what are the Jatakas? So when the Preksha is going around, he's seeing the king very sad. The king is leaving. His wife is saying, don't leave. Then the people are all very sad from the paintings that I showed you. All of that is trying to give the impression of understanding the essence behind those thoughts, which is finally you have to be at the stage of sattva. Everything else that is happening is fleeting. So the sthai bhava is being calm, being centered. The Vyabhichari and Sattvic bhavas. Vyabhichari bhavas, I can give you a classic example from Bharatanatyam. It's a very simple, I think some of you must have learned. It says, Sarasi jakshulu jalakamade tarunamanivu vachadi kejane jariga cheeralu mella chekoni terumulaku chujunte dharmama. That is, Lord Krishna is coming and taking all the clothes and putting it on the tree and then looking at the gopikas and getting angry. Now that is a sthai bhava. That is your explaining. But if I want to explain it more, I will go around, I will show the gopikas dancing, bathing, removing the clothes, all pani ke saath chhed-chad. Uske saath jo bhi taal raag hai. Then Krishna comes running and he says, now you see, you went and complained not to my mother. Now you wait and watch what I'm going to do. Clothes leke jana, upar. All that becomes expression of story. The rasa anubhuti happens, my dear friends, because of the expression of the stories, which in this case, I took the Jataka literature and the various murals of Ajanta to express the storyline. Now, of course, this is Nati Shastra. We have to look at that. And of course, this is what I said. So, rasa itself brings about Vibhava, Anubhava, and the Vyabhichari bhavas, which is what I said. A story. Now, if Buddha is going to say dukkha, dukkha, dukkha all the time, how are you going to get that feeling of dissatisfaction? How are you going to get that across to a lay person, to a grahastha, to a upasaka? How are you going to get across? The stories happened through the stories of Bodhisattva, through the stories of Jataka, where it was constructed at various levels, whether he was an elephant, whether he was a pigeon, whether he was a monkey, whether he was a king, in that context. Or the static that we saw in the dance. So this is Aswadite Visrasa. Now, Sringara, Hasya, Karuna, Rautra, Veera, Bhayanaka, Vibhitsa, Adbhuta. In the paintings that we see of Ajanta, we capture all these emotions through various. In the little time, I try to get my points across where all the rasa anubhuti that happens. And the same thing happens even with the brush. When the stories are written as a part of the Jatakas, when it is studied as a part of the Sangha, you see that so beautifully. I think I'm running out of time. That's my last slide. And the quest continues. Now this is a real picture that I found when I had gone to the Public Gardens, a museum where there was this mother and this child. They were looking at the panel and that Adbhuta Rasa. Okay, what is happening? I really don't know what's happening. So I decided to bring this because essentially this is the state of affairs that most of us are in. In the sense, we look at a painting for the sake of the painting. We look at the sculpture, we should. But can we see that they're all having these cross conversations, they're all having this samvaad, and that was my attempt. Thanks to the Hyderabad Literary Festival for giving me this platform to create that spandana. That now when you look at a painting, and if you're a dancer, or you're a musician, or you're a literature person, can that static medium also have a dynamic presence? Thank you so much for this opportunity, and if there's some time, any questions, otherwise we're fine.
Thank you, Radha. I'm not sure I can take maybe just one. Thank you so much, such an interesting. Okay, so one question, please.
I really don't know if this is out of context, but I visited Ajanta and I've seen the beautiful paintings. It's beyond description, the bhava that they evoke. Now, those were done by the monks. That's a vihara kind of.
Yes, during the Vasa retreat. Perfectly right.
The monks did that.
Yes.
And unless you have those rasa swadhana, you cannot create something like
Perfectly
that.
right.
And these are the monks who were, by his preachings, give up that vishaya.
Yes, lovely question. Kind of contradictory. Thanks so much for this question, ma'am. Thank you so much for this question. First of all, the Buddhist education that happened was holistic. The monks, when they joined, they were exposed to all kinds of disciplines and all kinds of subjects. Now, in the monks who joined, because a monk joined the Buddhist Sangha at a very later age, right? So the Pavijaya ceremony happened when the monk was quite late. And so the monk who must have joined, like for example, to give you an example, the monk who must have painted must have had this idea, must have been trained in this art of painting. Alekya, maybe the person was already painted, had learned this particular art. That was my first point. The second point also is, this is very interesting. When Buddha himself went from one place to another delivering lectures, he has used various analogies. In fact, some of the analogies that he's used is fabulous. In fact, one of the analogies, I think it's from the Majjhima Nikaya, very beautifully says, when a monk is entering a sangha, it is very similar like a bride who's entering a home. Now this is Buddha saying. So the point is, there is a power of observation. Second point. Third last point. They had to get the Brahma Viharas to the common man. Karuna, Upeka, Mudita. How are you supposed to get the Brahma Viharas to the common man without giving it to them in the knowledge, in the way that they would understand? So they use this medium to get those sublime thoughts across. Like, for example, those of us who are in our teaching profession, when we teach, we actually teach the students according to what they have understood or how they can understand the subject by giving various analogies. This could have been that. Right? And by painting all of this, they are also understanding the various human emotions that are there, the Navarasas, which cannot be denied. Right? So, this must have been a medium for them. That's why I use the word spandana. I use the word spandana very specifically because it was a trigger for them to understand this essence of, the sense-object contact, sense-object, and to also bring out the Shila Samadhi and Pragya. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Radha Kumar. She really deserves a standing ovation.
Oh.
This was something which really took us through a very, very detailed observation. And before we disperse, can we have a group photo with her, please?
Yes.